Is the US pushing China too far? Beijing has just issued a serious warning over Taiwan, and the tension is boiling over. China has warned Washington again and again, but this time, it's different. With fresh sanctions, military threats, and high-stakes diplomacy in play, are we on the brink of a major crisis? Could this be the spark that ignites a global showdown? Let's break it all down right now. This is Elite Global Watch, where we simplify the complex and reveal the hidden. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on major global events, power shifts, and breaking geopolitical news. Let's get started. To understand why China is furious about US arms sales to Taiwan, we need to go back a few decades, because this isn't just about weapons. It's about power, sovereignty, and a conflict decades in the making. For decades, the United States has been Taiwan's biggest military backer, selling fighter jets, missile defense systems, and advanced weaponry to help Taiwan defend itself. This is despite China vehemently opposing any military aid to the island. Since 2010 alone, the US has approved over $30 billion in arms sales to Taiwan, reinforcing its military capabilities against a potential Chinese invasion. China's One China policy versus US commitments to Taiwan. But here's where things get even more complicated. China views Taiwan as part of its territory, under its One China policy, meaning, in Beijing's eyes, Taiwan is not an independent country and should never receive military aid. Meanwhile, the US maintains a strategic ambiguity approach. It doesn't officially recognize Taiwan as a country, but at the same time, it sells weapons and provides military training to support Taiwan's self-defense. And that's what enrages Beijing. To China, every arms sale is a provocation, a direct challenge to its sovereignty. Past warnings from China and their reactions to US arms sales. And China isn't just complaining, they've been issuing warning after warning to the US for years. In 2019, after a US arms deal with Taiwan, China imposed sanctions on American defense companies. In 2022, after Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, China launched its largest military drills ever near the island, essentially a practice invasion. And in 2024, after the US approved another $2 billion arms package, China responded with threats of countermeasures and more military activity in the Taiwan Strait. So here's the big question: will this latest warning from China lead to something bigger? Is Beijing done with diplomatic protests and ready to take real action? Recent developments, the latest escalations. Over the past few months, the US has been pumping weapons into Taiwan at an alarming rate. And now, Beijing has had enough. It all started in October 2024, when the US approved a massive $2 billion arms deal to Taiwan, including air defense missile systems, the same ones used in Ukraine against Russian attacks. Then, in November 2024, another $385 million deal was signed, sending spare parts for Taiwan's F-16 fighter jets and radar systems. And finally, in December 2024, the US delivered $571 million in additional military aid, pushing China's patience to the limit. China immediately hit back. First, Beijing sanctioned 13 US defense contractors involved in Taiwan's arms deals, cutting them off from the Chinese market. Then, Chinese officials summoned US diplomats for emergency talks, accusing Washington of playing with fire and warning of consequences. But it didn't stop there. February 2025, the situation escalates. Just weeks ago, in February 2025, China launched another round of military drills near Taiwan, sending dozens of fighter jets across Taiwan's air defense zone and deploying warships dangerously close to the island. The message was clear: Beijing is done talking. Adding even more uncertainty to the situation, President Donald Trump was asked if the US would defend Taiwan if China attacks. His response? No comment. This strategic ambiguity is keeping China, Taiwan, and the world on edge. Without a clear US stance, could this encourage Beijing to make a move? And here's something huge that slipped under the radar. The US quietly removed a key policy statement from its website that previously opposed Taiwan's independence. This means one of two things. Either the US is signaling stronger support for Taiwan, or they're deliberately provoking Beijing. China immediately condemned this shift, calling it a dangerous provocation and warning that Washington is playing a dangerous game. So, what happens next? With China ramping up its military pressure, the US keeping its stance uncertain, and Taiwan caught in the middle, are we heading towards an unavoidable clash? The answer might be closer than we think. Geopolitical impact. What this means for the world. This isn't just about Taiwan. The stakes are global, and if tensions keep escalating, the world could face a crisis unlike anything we've seen before. China has been increasing military pressure on Taiwan, and every new arms deal from the US only accelerates the tension. Experts warn that China is shifting from warnings to preparation. The recent military drills near Taiwan were not just exercises, they were war simulations. If Beijing decides that diplomacy isn't working, could they resort to a blockade, cyber attacks, or even military action? And if that happens, would the US intervene? Or would Taiwan be left to fight alone? Beyond the battlefield, this crisis is also an economic and diplomatic time bomb. The US and China are the world's two biggest economies, and their relationship is already at a breaking point. Washington has been tightening trade restrictions, banning Chinese tech companies, and strengthening military ties with Asian allies like Japan and the Philippines. China, in response, is diversifying away from the US dollar, forming stronger ties with Russia, the BRICS alliance, and even the Middle East. A full-blown US-China conflict over Taiwan wouldn't just be a military clash, it would shatter global markets, disrupt trade, and push countries into taking sides. Taiwan's role in the global economy. Why the world can't afford a conflict. Taiwan isn't just a small island, it's the heartbeat of the global tech industry. Over 60% of the world's semiconductors, the tiny chips that power everything from iPhones to military systems, are produced in Taiwan. If conflict erupts, the supply chain for smartphones, AI, and defense technology could collapse overnight, causing a global economic crisis. This is why world leaders can't afford for Taiwan to become a battlefield. What's next? Future scenarios. We are standing at a dangerous crossroads. The warnings have been made, the weapons have been delivered, and the tensions have never been higher. But what happens next? Scenario 1. The US doubles down, more weapons, more tensions. One possibility? The US keeps pushing forward, sending even more advanced weapons to Taiwan. Some reports suggest that Washington is already preparing another multi-billion-dollar arms package, including long-range missiles and even drone warfare systems. If this happens, China's patience could run out. More weapons mean more Chinese military drills, more economic retaliation, and possibly a dangerous miscalculation that pushes both sides closer to conflict. Scenario 2. China takes stronger action, a blockade or cyber attacks. China has already warned that it won't sit back. But what does stronger action actually mean? Some military analysts believe that instead of a full-scale invasion, China could cut Taiwan off from the world by launching a naval blockade. This would cripple Taiwan's economy, strangle its trade, and force the world to choose, stand up to China or let Taiwan fall. Another option? Cyber warfare. China could launch massive cyber attacks on Taiwan's government, banks, and even US defense networks, crippling their ability to respond. These strategies wouldn't trigger immediate war, but they would send a clear message. Taiwan belongs to China, and the US needs to back off. Scenario 3. A global crisis. Could the US and its allies be pulled in? But here's the real nightmare scenario. This isn't just about Taiwan anymore. If tensions explode, the entire region could be dragged into conflict. The US has military pacts with Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Australia. If China moves on Taiwan, could this trigger a larger war in the Pacific? And if that happens, what about Russia? With Moscow and Beijing growing closer, would Putin support China in a standoff with the US? This isn't just a fight over an island anymore. It could reshape the balance of global power forever. In conclusion, so, are we on the brink of a major global conflict? Or is this just another warning that will eventually fade away? The US keeps arming Taiwan. China keeps warning Washington to stop. But with military drills intensifying and diplomatic tensions at their highest in years, we have to ask, who will make the next move? What do you think? Should the US keep arming Taiwan, knowing it could escalate tensions with China? Or is this too risky, pushing the world toward a crisis? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If you found this video insightful, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into global power shifts.